Oh, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Alba. And here it is, Friday, the 18th, and I'm going to play Chris Hedges for you. He's quite an interesting gentleman. Here he is. This is on a show on public radio. So here it is.
Story today from Sharm el-Sheikh reads, and I quote, "Global climate talks in Egypt are entering their final stretch, and so far, delegates have made little progress on the biggest climate question facing humanity." Ali Zaidi is he right?
Here's the way I look at it. I remember flying to Paris for the climate negotiations in 2015, and at that time, the world was looking at temperature rise 5-6 degrees, maybe more. I remember walking through the gates of the White House when President Biden took office, and the world was looking at a temperature rise of 3 degrees, maybe more. Now we're looking at something below 2 degrees. I think that's a really hopeful story. I know folks like to write climate change as a story of gloom and doom. I think it's a story of hope and opportunity, and I think Joe Biden sees that and is tapping into that power and that potential in accelerating us forward.
That is National Climate Advisor to President Biden, Ali Zaidi, just back from a big conference in Sharm el-Sheikh. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
For many in the Democratic Party, the state of Georgia has come to symbolize the future. But Stacey Abrams has now lost another run for governor. With the Senate meeting still to come, what's next for her and for Georgia Democrats? That story is on tomorrow's program. If you're not by your radio, try asking your smart speaker to play NPR or your local station by name. This is All Things Considered from NPR News. If you ventured out to a Starbucks today, it's possible that on your way to a chestnut praline latte, you might have come across a picket line. Members of Starbucks Workers United organized the group's largest single-day strike, and they timed it so it would fall on what's known as Red Cup Day, one of the busiest days of the year for the coffee giant. NPR's Vanessa Romo has more.
Hardcore Starbucks fans have been waiting for Red Cup Day, the day of the year when the company hands out limited edition holiday plastic drink containers, cued by this music. In some places, customers line up at the crack of dawn to get their hands on a collectible cup, making it one of the most profitable days on the calendar for Starbucks. Baristas, like Josie Serrano, are less enthused.
It's always a very, very insane day. It just seems like every year we never have the staffing available for it. It feels like we're worked to the bone.
Serrano has worked at Starbucks for about 4.5 years at a store in Long Beach, California, one of the 264 stores that have voted to unionize over the last year. And they're on strike today. They say the understaffing issue is just one of the reasons that Starbucks Workers United decided to launch the so-called Red Cup Rebellion, a national strike with more than 100 stores staging their own picket lines. More broadly, though, Serrano says the walkout is intended to get Starbucks to bargain with workers in good faith as the two sides try to hammer out new contracts.
It's been a really frustrating process, because Starbucks has been doing everything it can to delay us getting our contract.
According to the union, the company has retaliated against union leaders, and Starbucks lawyers have walked out on bargaining sessions or made last-minute rescheduling requests that make it challenging for members to participate.
Nothing could be further from the truth.
That's Starbucks' AJ Jones, Executive Vice President of Communications. He says, actually, the company has probably been overly aggressive in trying to schedule bargaining sessions. The problem with recent talk breakdowns, he says, is that union leaders at the table want to record or broadcast negotiation talks, a legal no-no.
Under the National Labor Relations Act, you are not allowed to record bargaining sessions. And that actually is a clear violation of the act because of what's being discussed.
On the picket line, union members are hoping to win over customers who might not be thrilled with the strike if it interferes with their chance to get a precious cup.
Oh, a
So
precious
they're
cup.
offering an even more exclusive commemorative item, a union designed
relationships, and the context is what makes species happen. Species evolve into niches that are series and webworks of relationships. So really just talking about a species as a thread is already getting away from the reality of the picture. A species is relationships. It's a node in relationships. And if you pull a node out of relationships, the relationships break. You don't just lose a thread, you lose the relationships that are holding the thread in place.
And we were latchkey kids, and we determined it was unsafe to go outside, so we quit.
The victims were the millions of people in early September.
I was in shock.
You can avoid being hit.
People know very well by now that I've lost my husband.
CIA death squads, U.S. troops, foreign soldiers killed, 13 priests.
Thank you.
It is not that worthy victims do not suffer, nor.
Thus, we need better weapons. The military-industrial complex grows and grows. The Pentagon has carte blanche. It asks for a new aircraft carrier, submarine, or fighter jet. The answer from the White House and the Congress is, sure, how many do you want? The legendary Marine Corps General Smedley Butler said, war is a racket. It always has been. It's possibly the oldest, easily the most profitable, surely the most vicious. It's the only one international in scope, Butler said. It's the only one in which the profits are reckoned in dollars and the losses in lives. Then he added, it's an economic imperative which must be stimulated, however deviously. Our guest today is Chris Hedges. He's an award-winning journalist who has reported from war zones all over the world. He writes a weekly column for SheerPost.com, and he's the host of the Chris Hedges Report. He's the author of many books, including The Greatest Evil is War. He spoke at the Sanctuary for Independent Media in Troy, New York in late October 2022. And now, Chris Hedges.
Preemptive war, whether in Iraq or Ukraine, is a war crime. It does not matter if the war is launched on the basis of lies and fabrications, as was the case in Iraq, or because of the breaking of a series of agreements with Russia, including the promise by Washington not to extend NATO beyond the borders of a unified Germany, not to deploy thousands of NATO troops in Eastern Europe, not to meddle in the internal affairs of nations on Russia's border, and the refusal to implement the Minsk II peace agreement. This provocation, which includes establishing a NATO missile base 100 miles from Russia's border, was foolish and highly irresponsible. It never made geopolitical sense. The invasion of Ukraine would, I expect, never have happened if these promises had been kept. Russia has every right to feel threatened, betrayed, and angry. But to understand is not to condone. The invasion of Ukraine under post-Nuremberg laws is a criminal war of aggression. I know the instrument of war. War is not politics by other means. It is demonic. I spent 2 decades as a war correspondent in Central America, the Middle East, Africa, and the Balkans, where I covered the wars in Bosnia and Kosovo. I carry within me the ghosts of dozens of those swallowed up in the violence, including my close friend, Reuters correspondent Kurt Schork, who was killed in an ambush in Sierra Leone with another friend, Miguel Gil Moreno. I know the chaos and disorientation of war, the constant uncertainty and confusion. In a firefight, you are only aware of what is happening a few feet around you. You desperately and not always successfully struggle to figure out where the firing is coming from in the hopes you can avoid being hit. I have felt the helplessness and the paralyzing fear, which years later descend on me like a freight train in the middle of the night, leaving me wrapped in coils of terror, my heart racing, my body dripping with sweat. I have heard the wails of those convulsed by grief as they clutch the bodies of friends and family, including children. I hear them still. It does not matter the language: Spanish, Arabic, Hebrew, Dinka, Serbo-Croatian, Albanian, Ukrainian, Russian. Death cuts through the linguistic barriers. I know what wounds look like: legs blown off, heads imploded into a bloody, pulpy mass, gaping holes in stomachs, pools of blood, cries of the dying, sometimes for their mothers, and the smell of death, the supreme sacrifice made for flies and maggots. I was beaten by Iraqi and Saudi secret police. I was taken prisoner by the Contras in Nicaragua, who radioed back to their base in Honduras to see if they should kill me, and again in Basra after the first Gulf War, never knowing if I would be executed, under constant guard, and often without food, drinking out of mud puddles. The primary lesson in war is that we, as distinct individuals, do not matter. We become numbers, fodder, objects. Life, once precious and sacred, becomes meaningless, sacrificed to the insatiable appetite of Mars. No one in wartime is exempt. We were expendable, Eugene Sledge wrote of his experiences as a Marine in the South Pacific in World War II. It was difficult to accept. We come from a nation and a culture that values life and the individual. To find oneself in a situation where your life seems of little value is the ultimate in loneliness. It is a humbling experience. The landscape of war is hallucinogenic. It defies comprehension. You have no concept of time in a firefight, a few minutes, a few hours. War in an instant obliterates homes and communities, all that was once familiar, and leaves behind smoldering ruins and a trauma that you carry for the rest of your life. You cannot comprehend what you see. I've tasted enough of war, enough of my own fear. My body turned to jelly to know that war is always evil, the purest expression of death, dressed up in patriotic cant about liberty and democracy, and sold to the naive as a ticket to glory, honor, and courage. It is a toxic and seductive elixir. Those who survive, as Kurt Vonnegut wrote, struggle afterwards to reinvent themselves and their universe, which, on some level, will never make sense again. War destroys all systems that sustain and nurture life: familial, economic, cultural, political, environmental, and social. Once war begins, no one, even those nominally in charge of waging war, can guess what will happen, how the war will develop, how it can drive armies and nations towards suicidal folly. There are no good wars, none. And this includes World War II, which has been sanitized and mythologized to mendaciously celebrate American heroism, purity, and goodness. If truth is the first casualty in war, ambiguity is the second. The bellicose rhetoric embraced and amplified by the American press, demonizing Vladimir Putin and elevating the Ukrainians to the status of demigods, demanding more robust military intervention along with the crippling sanctions meant to bring down Putin's government, is infantile and dangerous. The Russian media narrative is as simplistic as ours. There were no discussions about pacifism in the basements in Sarajevo when we were being hit with hundreds of Serbian shells a day and under constant sniper fire. It made sense to defend the city. It made sense to kill or be killed. The Bosnian Serb soldiers in the Drina Valley, Vukovar, and Srebrenica had amply demonstrated their capacity for murderous rampages, including the gunning down of hundreds of soldiers and civilians and the wholesale rape of women and girls. But this did not save any of the defenders in Sarajevo from the poison of violence, the soul-destroying force that is war. I knew a Bosnian soldier who heard a sound behind a door while patrolling on the outskirts of Sarajevo. He fired a burst from his AK-47 through the door. A delay of a few seconds in combat can mean death. When he opened the door, he found the bloody remains of a 12-year-old girl. His daughter was 12. He never recovered. Only the autocrats and politicians who dream of empire and global hegemony, of the godlike power that comes with wielding armies, warplanes, and fleets, along with the merchants of death, whose business floods countries with weapons, profit from war. The expansion of NATO into Eastern Europe has earned Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, General Dynamics, Boeing, Northrop Grumman, Analytic Services, Huntington Ingalls, BAE Systems, and L3 Harris billions in profits. The stoking of conflict in Ukraine will earn them billions more. The European Union has allocated hundreds of millions of euros to purchase weapons for Ukraine. Germany will almost triple its own defense budget for 2023. The Biden administration has asked Congress to provide over $50 billion to Ukraine in weapons and aid. The permanent war economy operates outside the laws of supply and demand. It is the root of the 2-decade-long quagmire in the Middle East, and it is the root of the conflict with Moscow. The merchants of death are satanic. The more corpses they produce, the more their bank accounts swell. They will cash in on this conflict, one that now flirts with nuclear holocaust. The same cabal of war-mongering pundits, foreign policy specialists, and government officials year after year, decade after decade, smugly dodge responsibility for the military fiascos they orchestrate. They are protean, shifting adroitly with the political winds, moving from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party and then back again, mutating from cold warriors to neocons to liberal interventionists. Pseudo-intellectuals, they exude a cloying Ivy League snobbery as they sell perpetual fear and a racist worldview where the lesser breeds of the earth only understand violence. They are pimps of war, puppets of the Pentagon, a state within a state, and the defense contractors who lavishly fund their think tanks, Project for the New American Century, American Enterprise Institute, Foreign Policy, Initiative, Institute for the Study of War, Atlantic Council, and Brookings Institution. Like some mutant strain of an antibiotic-resistant bacteria, They cannot be vanquished. It does not matter how wrong they are, how absurd their theories, how many times they lie or denigrate other cultures and societies as uncivilized, or how many murderous military interventions go bad. They are immovable props, the parasitic mandarins of power that are vomited up in the dying days of any empire, including ours, leaping from one self-defeating catastrophe to the next. I reported on the suffering, misery, and murderous rampages these shills for war engineered and funded. My first encounter with them was in Central America. Elliot Abrams, convicted of providing misleading testimony to Congress on the Iran-Contra affair, and later pardoned by President H.W. Bush so he could return to government to sell us the Iraq War, and Robert Kagan, director of the State Department's Public Diplomacy Office in Latin America, were propagandists for the brutal military regimes in El Salvador and Guatemala, as well as the rapists and homicidal thugs that made up the rogue Contra forces fighting the Sandinista government in Nicaragua, which they illegally funded. Their job was to discredit our reporting. They and their coterie of fellow war lovers went on to push for the expansion of NATO in Central and Eastern Europe. They are cheerleaders for the apartheid state of Israel, justifying its war crimes against Palestinians and myopically conflating Israel's interests with our own. They advocated for airstrikes in Serbia, calling for the U.S. to, quote, take out Slobodan Milosevic. They were the authors of the policy to invade Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and Libya. Robert Kagan and William Kristol, with their typical cluelessness, wrote in April 2002 that, quote, the road that leads to real security and peace is the road that runs through Baghdad. We saw how that worked out. That road led to the dissolution of Iraq, the destruction of its civilian infrastructure, including the obliteration of 18 of 20 electricity generating plants, and nearly all the sanitation systems during a 43-day period when 9,000 tons of bombs were rained down on the country, the rise of radical jihadist groups throughout the region, and the proliferation of failed states. The war in Iraq, along with a humiliating defeat in Afghanistan, shredded the illusion of U.S. military and global hegemony. It also inflicted on Iraqis who had nothing to do with the attacks of 9/11, wholesale slaughter of civilians, the torture and sexual humiliation of Iraqi prisoners, and the ascendancy of Iran as the preeminent power in the Middle East. They continue to call for war with Iran, with Fred Kagan stating, quote, there is nothing we can do short of attacking to force Iran to give up its nuclear weapons. They for the overthrow of President Nicolas Maduro after trying to do the same to Hugo Chavez in Venezuela, and they have targeted Daniel Ortega, their old nemesis in Nicaragua. They embrace a pure-blind nationalism that prohibits them from seeing the world from any perspective other than their own. They know nothing about the machinery of war, its consequences, or its inevitable blowback. They know nothing about the peoples and cultures they target for violent regeneration. They believe in the divine right to impose their quote-unquote values on others by force. Fiasco after fiasco, and now they are stoking a war with Russia. The nationalist is by definition an ignoramus, Yugoslav writer Danilo Kish observed. Nationalism is the line of least resistance, the easy way. The nationalist is untroubled. He knows or thinks he knows what his values are, his. That's to say, national. That's to say, the values of the nation he belongs to, ethical and political. He is not interested in others. They are no concern of his. Hell, it's other people, other nations, another tribe. They don't even need investigating. The nationalist sees other people in his own image. Nationalists.
And that's Chris Hedges. And it's on a radio show called Alternative Radio. And you could go to alternativeradio.org. And they have 40 years of lectures by people like Noam Chomsky and Howard Zinn and Albert Einstein and Chris Hedges and hundreds of more amazing authors and scholars and people who are there on the ground. And that's Chris Hedges. He was a war correspondent for 20 years for New York Times and Wall Street Journal and things of that nature. And he really, that's why I played him, right? He really writes well. His books, he has a number of really good books. Now, another group that you should go look at is a thing called Dark Journalist, right? It's on YouTube or darkjournalist.com or darkjournalist.org. He's been, a dark, looking at what's going on underneath for a real long time. And Captain Austin Fitts and Joseph P. Farrell. Captain Austin Fitts was in the Treasury Department, worked at Freddie Mac, and saw in the Herbert H. and Bill Clinton days, just, terrible dynamics that was going on leading up to, Bill Clinton was the guy who brought on 08, right? And so he got rid of Glass-Steagall and a whole bunch of things that protected the banking industry. And it's worse than it was now than it was then, right? Nothing has been fixed. And Nancy Pelosi is just retired from being the speaker because she's made all the money she needs to make, right? But she's still going to hang in there as a congresswoman. So, kids, buckle up because, 3 years ago, I started talking about the big splat, right? Go back and watch the shows, right? And YouTube has organized my things for me. The more interesting short things of the great Magoo talking to you. And then the more popular ones that had over 200 views each. And so, they did a nice job, better than me. So thank you, YouTube. And I also want to thank anyone who's given me over the years something to PayPal for me at thedudewake42 at thedudewake42 at gmail. All lowercase, all one thing, dudewake42 at gmail. And that's my email address, thedudewake42 at gmail. You want to get a hold of me, go ahead and do that. So I'm on the bop, and I'm getting closer and closer to really be on the high wire, So it should be fun, should be interesting. And kids, it's same as it ever was. Nothing is any different. We are here in the sandbox because we are all our relations, If you think you are the exceptional one, that you're so special, that life is all about you, it's not. It's, it's about all of us together, right? We're all in this together. All our relations. Let's call up some folks. Let's try Johnny. See how he's doing.
Hello.
Hey there, buddy. How you doing?
Hello. Hi.
Hi. So I'm getting closer and closer to head your way, and I don't know if I'll be there before Thanksgiving or after Thanksgiving, but I'm heading that direction. And so, is your boy coming to be with you?
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know, but I don't know.
Would you be? Do Do you want that? Would that be fun? Would you feel good about that? It's like
About what?
having your son being with you, coming to the school.
I don't know if he'll get to be here or not, and I don't know what your thing is with
With what? My only thing with you, John, is that you're my friend, and I want you to be happy. That's the only thing that I have with you.
You've never had any kids that you had to worry about.
Well, I did have 128
But they're
godchildren.
not your real kids. If any of them died, if any of them literally went to hell, if anything bad happened to them, it wouldn't be that bad for you.
No,
really
I was
consider
very, I took it upon myself to be that grown up that when they needed someone.
Well, I have real children who I love a tremendous amount and would have died for up until the past few years or so. Maybe I wouldn't die for him, but I'd maybe die for the baby. But I would have died for my wife. I would have died for my kids, at least, and I wasn't even depressed. But now it's like I don't know what's appropriate or not.
The appropriate thing is to be with them. That's what a father is supposed to be. Is with them.
Is to actually get to be there with them. But how do I do that when she has made it so difficult since about 2015, since before I moved here? That's been the problem.
Well,
she's made it difficult to be there for them.
You could have been there with them. I mean, it's not like I got to live with them here in my house. But when I was younger, I got to live with them. Of course, the first 8 years of their lives, I got to live in the same house. We went out places together. We were always around each other all the time. And then she started being funny and barely letting me in the house. And she even let you in the house before she let me in the house. Well, you wouldn't get out of the car. I mean, John, you had a great opportunity for at least a year and a half.
Because of the way she has been, because the way she was to me, and it was difficult to even drive there after all that I had to go through.
Yeah, but I drove you there, but that's neither here nor there. That's like water under the bridge. The thing is, what's happening today? You know, your boys are growing up; they can come and be with you. You know.
I know. I've asked her 1,000 times. Please send the children to me. I will fly there and fly back with them if she wants someone to fly with them on the plane. I can do that. I'm ready to do that. I've gone there 10 times or 9 times. I've literally gone to Texas 9 or 10 times. I was so worried I had to be hospitalized for in total 3.5 weeks in a hospital. It worried me so much having to go there to where it's like her parents' favorite place that they're like, oh, you can only see your own children on these special terms. And then that's how she's been since about 2015. She wouldn't let me just be in the house and walk around and be nice and kind and, eat food and walk around and be there with the kids and do good things for them and be a good father, be a good example, and go out places in public and show them how to be and raise them in the ways of God and Jesus like I'm supposed to do as much. It's been very difficult now, and it's caused, at one time, anyway, how are you?
John, always good, and like I said, I'm always there for you. And when I
but
see,
it's okay. I went to Texas and I've been a good father. It's just not been easy with the distance she created, but it's been okay, And if I could for once get my kid with me, or all 3 kids, just getting one of them.
Just get one of them. Yeah, I'm starting with the oldest.
That's not it. Getting one of them is not enough. I want all 3 children.
Well, start with one.
No, you don't start with one. They're my children. I have to be there for all of them. This has been a problem that I haven't been able to be there with them the entire time.
Well,
I'm supposed to be there for them like every day.
That's true. Yeah, but part of that is your own choosing to do that. You could have.
No, that's not true. That is wrong. It's because Danica made it difficult to be there for them. It's because Danica made it difficult for me to be there for them. It's all her fault for being mean to me, because back in 2015, I had waited for her for 3 years. Since the end of 2011, I had waited for her for 3 years, hoping to God to get her and the kids back and my family back. And she was kind of nice, and she had gone out to Texas for a year then, and felt so awful. And she finally moved back, and we were in Roanoke for a while, and everything's okay. But I missed having love at home, a wife at home, and I waited 3 years hoping to be with her, and she still wouldn't be with me. So I finally believed her and her parents' stupid idea of divorce. They think divorce is good or bad or something, and I got a girlfriend. I got a girlfriend for a few months, and then that was in 2015. And ever since then, she has made it really difficult for me, really bad for 7 years. She barely let me in the house. She changed the locks on the house that my parents were letting her live in for free, and so I couldn't go in and see the kids as much. And she said I wasn't allowed to go in as much, or had to wait outside for them, and weird things that are just not how it's supposed to be. I was always around her and the kids before that. Like, I could go to their house and walk into their house, and we'd eat food and play games, and it was fun. And we did, I'd be a good father. I'd be a good father and there for them, and raise them in the ways they're supposed to be raised. And I was there around them about every single day.
But John, this has been the subject for the last, as long as I've known you, and I keep telling you that all you got to do is.
The reason why I'm not around all three children every single day
but
at
you,
my house,
in reality,
and also going out places, the reason why I'm not with them is because of the way she's been to me, making it difficult for me to get to them, to even be a father for them all the time. But I am a father. I've been a father the entire time. I've always been their father, and I always will be their father. But you weren't really, I always will be their father.
Well, the children that were my godchildren, the 128, yes, they weren't biological children, but in that 5 years that I was working on this housing
but if they
project,
all literally,
they were basically they were in bad neighborhoods, and they could have gotten involved in really bad things, and I kind of grabbed them, got their families to have their own apartment, and gave them a job and gave them guidance. And when I went back in 2011, all of them had businesses. All of them had children that had gone to college. Hey, John, someone's calling out. I got to go. Hey, buddy.
Yeah, someone's calling out. I got to go.
Hey, Robert. Robert. Robert.
Hello. Did you get my texts?
Yeah.
Well, welcome. You've been extracted.
I've been extracted. Yep. So,
extraction team is on the way.
Yes.
Miss Fish is also online.
Yes, I see Miss Fish. So when you guys are there, can you talk to each other off to the side?
Via the chat, yes.
Yeah, so you chat to
and
each
I know your vision is not very good, and the phone and stuff.
Well, when you guys put it in capitals, I can kind of read it.
Oh, okay, I will do that next time.
Yeah.
Just FYI, when folks normally use all caps,
right,
it's their attempt to scream over the text.
I know that, and
but I will do that for this.
Right. I don't know that protocol. I just know that if you put it in caps, I can kind of read it when
understood.
It's smallish.
So
and that's why Fish and others.
I was responding. I put no kids for me.
Right.
I punched myself in the nuts very hard. Punch, sack, attack.
Well, the way to go with that is depending on your blood type. Men's little sperm modality depends on that, and some sperm
and
like it warm,
too.
and
also,
some like it warm, and some like it cold. Right, so. If your little swimmers like it cold, you wear tighty whites. If your swimmers like it cold,
hot, wear some loosey goosey.
Warm, you wear boxers. And
that is correct.
And that cuts sperm modality by like 89%.
Yes. So. And I when I worked in a video business, a videotaping business, I would also sit as close to the degausser as possible. I'd say they came out fucked up at least I could enlist them in show business.
Right, exactly.
So,
Put them on the
have a
carnival
lobster
train.
baby, you know.
Put them on the carnival train.
You know. But, you know.
The monkey boy. The girl
and
that
any,
looks like a
any
fish.
children or spermatozoa that got away,
Yep.
that became a bipedal life form, none of them knocked the door. And I believe the statute of limitations of any child support has been left. So
I
don't
think
have
there's a
to worry
special
about that.
category there.
Don't have to go to Mexico. Don't have to, you know. Manage. Actually, on a serious note, which was kind of sad, I believe one of the young ladies I was involved with many years ago may have secretly gotten an abortion, but I do not know. It's something I kind of.
Well, okay, enough of that.
Which was sad because not sad because
well, it's
loss of life is one thing. I'm not trying to promote abortion or non-abortion for that matter, but for someone to just kind of do that on their own without asking the donor, or not asking, I shouldn't even say ask because no one needs my permission, at least in my view anyway. But I led a very reckless life at that point.
Right.
When I kind of got wind of that may have happened, I can't confirm it. It was kind of sad,
right.
You know.
Well, in my experience, so I had a lot of female friends, not just guy friends, female friends, and then I had girlfriends, which is different, right? So,
understood.
And I started traveling around and living in different places pretty young, like 14 and 16. I started traveling my own. Back in the days when you could hitchhike and not worry about getting murdered. So I knew a lot of women from all over America, and New York State had legal abortion before Roe, like, you know, from 69 on. And so I always had people visiting me, and I knew places and clinics and things of that matter. I had a friend of mine that I went to NYU with, and we were studying sociology, and she started the first female mission, meaning up until like 71, women who were homeless had no place to go. Men had the mission. Women had no place to go because women weren't supposed to fall into that category.
Yeah, and that's still actually having worked in the, not the shelter system, but homeless population. Mostly I dealt with males, and our facility was all male. And they're very few and far between. They do exist, women-only shelters and things of that nature, but they're very few and far between.
Right. And they're usually, because most other missions are, even though they're nonprofit, they are a money-making motif, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. That's 100%. You know, for the listening audience,
right.
Non-for-profit, don't. It's still a corporate structure.
Right, and they still get.
There's people get paid.
Right, and the guys at the top, like in Roanoke, the guy.
I got paid. I mean, I was paid. I worked for a non-for-profit. So
right.
I got paid very little because I was low on the food chain.
Right, but guys at the top of the food chain, they would probably make $100,000 or more.
They do well.
Yeah.
They do well. And listen, I'm not even trying to frame this in a way that's, that's fucked up or it's shady or anything like that. Not at all. But I think just in general, the public should be aware of that. And, these places are, depending upon, certain things I'm not going to get into, but there's a lot of government oversight to this,
Yeah, but government is just another form of
then again, when you get involved in governments, level of trust.
Were you listening to?
Is yet another story.
Were you listening to this live stream earlier on when I had Chris Hedges talking about war?
Well, I know. No, I did not hear his particular.
He just finished writing a book about war, so.
But I definitely heard his views over the years, so I kind of have an idea what it was about, although I haven't heard it. Yeah, it's a profit. It's everything. Everything is about money.
Yeah,
You know?
money and control. Money and control.
Absolutely, money and control. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Chris Hedges, I'm glad that they're letting him come back to YouTube.
Well, no, what it is he has to. They kind of took him. They took all his programs that he was on RT,
Right.
and so he has his own platform, so they can't get rid of him. And they just got rid of, if he hadn't saved all his shows, they just got rid of all of that product.
Sure. Well, I mean, listen, I don't know the man personally, of what interviews and things I've watched and articles I've read, and just his story, his career. He's a pretty sharp guy, and he knows he's saying some things that are going to upset the powers that think they are.
Right.
So I'm sure he was bearing that in mind as being censored, and I would even go so far as to say he was aware that he could be possibly purged.
Right. And so
That
he's
word, which is not used
right.
in a normal vocabulary of
Right.
our American citizenry,
Right.
because we're lulled into believing that there are no such things as political prisoners.
Right.
The
I mean,
suppression
look
of
at a guy
dissent,
like
things of that
Wilhelm Reich. Wilhelm Reich, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Rudolf Steiner, Ouspensky.
I don't know so much. How did Steiner actually get?
Well, he just got
collide with the government.
Basically what happened was he was, turn of the century, the 1890s. He was the dude, right?
Yeah,
He very similar to Tesla. Tesla was always wearing a tuxedo, going to all the nice parties.
Right.
He never had to worry about money. I mean, he didn't have to. He had more money than.
He went to all tomorrow's parties.
Yes, exactly. And then when they both started to bring forth knowledge.
Underground is very velvet, so I've been told.
Yes, yes. And he was loved by men and women each. So basically, those.
Faraday often.
Well, right up your line.
He's quite a swinger.
Yes, quite a swinger. But he was a man. He was a man.
Straight down the middle.
He was a man out. Both these guys were men out of time, meaning.
There certainly were.
They weren't thinking about the social, political, and economic strata. They wanted to change. They knew it was time for the world to
They were
change.
seekers of the truth. So.
Right. And so they were, doing that.
Unfortunately, due to that fact that they were unconcerned with the social constraints of their times.
Right.
They were harmed.
Right. And when they
very
were
severely punished.
They were, I was never
transgressing these norms.
Right. I was never punished like that, but I was similar to them in that.
Well, I heard some of that phone call. That sounded very punishing. But anyway.
Yes. But the thing was, when I was, before I died in 2014, I just knew my 20 all the time, and it was like. I was always in the right place, always doing the right thing, always having the best of times, right? Even though it was the worst of times, I was having the best of times. And
well, like Charles Dickens said, it was the worst of times, it was the best of times.
Yep. We were all going to heaven. We were all going the other way.
Both.
Yep.
At any given moment throughout the days of our lives.
Yep.
It's your choice, sir.
Yep.
Whether you choose to be well or you choose to wear short shorts and think you're famous.
Yeah, that's right.
But
exactly.
anyway,
exactly.
I do declare.
And and the thing about being a parent, meaning being a parent is being a person who's responsible. Being a parent is a person who puts the child
for the lives that you have brought into this world.
Right. Puts the child before your own.
All I have to be responsible is to make sure to just throw the tissue out. But that's a whole other story.
Right.
I never let them live. I just, do what I need to do, and it's on a tissue, and that's it. But my daddy gave me a lesson many years ago.
And what did Daddy say?
As a youngster, well, I had a young lady at the house, and I was being responsible. So I wore what we call a Jimmy or Jimmy crack corn or a condom or prophylactic, if you want to use those terms. And as a very naive young man of 16, 17 years old, I just threw the thing in the damn toilet and flushed it, causing the commode to overflow when my father went to relieve himself. And when he saw the said prophylactic item floating in all of it, as they say, he knew who to talk to. So he gave me a stern lecture, which was not so much the birds, the bees, and responsibility. He just said, just put it in a tissue, roll it up, and throw it in the garbage. Do not throw it down the commode. Thank you. So that
Like
was my
throwing a
lesson.
balloon down there. Yes,
You don't want to do that. So
don't wanna do
listeners, learn from my mistakes.
Right.
Thank
So, but being a parent is being responsible. It's like when you have a child, you no longer are the singular item in your life. I mean,
That is certainly correct, sir.
that is the
couldn't agree with you
extension,
more.
meaning that is what gives the individual the true experience of the we and me. You know,
That's actually a very wonderful way of putting it, sir, because I think sometimes we kind of look more in terms of responsibility being a burden rather than a privilege.
right.
And one way to diminish the ego, as in many spiritual practices, and even viewing the birth process or the becoming a parent, that is a spiritual practice, and it couldn't be more ego deflating as
Especially
to
for the
have
guy.
extended yourself. Absolutely. And now it is your responsibility also to rear the child in a way that they understand the constraints of the society that they happen to be in, and to encourage them to find ways to live within those constraints that are not harmful to their own individual growth.
Yep.
That is a lesson that I wish I was given growing up as a
Well,
young
you know,
person.
when I was doing this in my 40s, the housing thing in the Lower East Side and the South Bronx.
Yes.
And in Brooklyn, and I would see these kids, and they'd be running around trying to be part of a gang, and I see this kid running. Hey, what do you got a gun? Give me that gun. And Bobby gave it to me to take it over to Jimmy. He gave me $10. I said, no, he's having you run across the street, so the cops are waiting there, and they're going to grab you, and you're going to spend the next 28 years in jail for a crime you didn't do. And so give me that gun. I took it apart, threw it down the drain, and I said, listen, I'm going to hire you to be my helper at $10 an hour, and I'll give you a place to
You
live.
definitely exemplify, what do they say, it takes a village to raise a child.
Yeah, that's it.
As I believe Maya Angelou is quoted as saying, and fortunately that quote has been abused by
Hillary.
politicians who could care less, and they use it as a throwaway.
They do it the same thing as the tissue your daddy talked about. You know, that's what Hillary uses, things like that. Is that?
Yeah, well,
tissue.
she's reptilian, so you know.
Yep. And people don't.
They don't even have live births.
Yes.
Oh,
they come out an egg.
I don't know.
So,
yes, I do declare.
but that's what war is about. It's a reptilian ceremony. You know, it's a sacrifice, a blood sacrifice.
Yes, it is. Gotta get that that adrenochrome.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta drink that.
Yep. So
it's their sustenance.
And it seems, I mean, if you look at the last 600 years, there hasn't been a day we haven't had a large war going on somewhere.
Well, war has to continue to be perpetuated, you know, to keep them that whole thing alive. I mean, I'm sure that's what Chris Hedges was talking about.
Yes, he was.
Howard Zinn has been another gentleman who's expounded upon that, the military-industrial complex and how it connects to the prison-industrial complex, and how these things all connect with a global order of dominance and control over the human population.
Banking and the...
that is correct. Everything is for control. It's a control system or control grid, if you want to call it.
Yes. Yep. And, you know, for all...
But I just had a lovely tuna fish sandwich, by the way. It was very good.
All of these people who are coming out about this, you know, it's not like the general public doesn't have access to seeing what's going on. You know, it's like right in front
Surely
of
they do, but the thing, what's really funny is the fact you and I can have a conversation like this, be tracked, monitored, whatever. But we're no threat to anybody, so it's not like somebody gonna come along.
Right.
And also, truth be told, DARPA gave the internet to the world.
Right.
So it was already, it wasn't like they said, well, let's give the world something that can be used against us to hurt us. That's all planned out. It's not
there's a very good
just
book.
gotta say like, we let the cat out of the bag.
No. It was done on
very
purpose.
smart. It's not. These are not dumb people. They've had thousands and thousands of years in their generations, their families, down the line of how to control people psychologically, and even on an energetic level.
Right.
This has been going on for centuries.
Yeah,
if not even longer.
60,000 years in this motif, meaning
yeah,
been going
absolutely.
On for
I mean, there's time frames that are so beyond.
Right.
So basically, not to get all into the details like that, but
into the weeds, as
they
say.
They know what they're doing,
yeah.
And they know the people, have been conditioned for so long that even if you told them you're in chains, they would say, well, don't you like the color of the chains? They're very nice.
Yeah, right. You have a choice. You can have gray chains, or you have black chains, you have gold
that's
chains.
really good. You get the pink chip in your head, or the black chip, whatever you want.
Whatever you want. Yeah.
It's very stylish.
Yeah, it's very stylish. Yeah.
So I used to feel upset about that, the human condition, and feeling like very despondent about it and stuff. But it doesn't matter to me. What people do.
It's bottom line is, it's all going to work out in the end.
Well, that's exactly correct, and I'm glad that I've made your acquaintance, and that you always bring me back to that point, and I need to be reminded of that continuously.
Right.
Because it is going to all work out the way. I mean, I've studied enough spiritual stuff and continue to grow in that area. But I look at this, and it all says it. Every religious text I've ever read all says it's going to work out in the end.
And it basically also says that all the suffering and misery that the community goes through, it's sad, but it also is what we were put here in these bodies to have experience.
That is correct, sir. Well, all of it is grist for the mill.
Grist for the mill, yep.
And it is all part of the process.
And it's a work in progress. It's
Hillary, she belongs in this whole thing. It's all, nothing is not, everything is everything else.
Yep, exactly. And we are all, the thing that we have a choice. We are the deciders what we're going to do. Not anybody else, what we're going to do. And when we do our best in every day and every way to serve love
let you know
creation.
Front, sir, that I only have 10 more minutes left, and I have to take my nice walk.
Okay.
I've been instructed to take a walk after every meal, so.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, that way I can make number 2 easier.
Are you at work or at home?
No, I've been home, sir. I've been enjoying a nice vacation.
Oh, good.
This is the end of the second week of that vacation. And I go back to work on Tuesday.
Oh, this coming Tuesday. The Tuesday before Thanksgiving.
The Tuesday before Thanksgiving. Unfortunately, my organization, we do have the actual Thanksgiving day off, which just happens to fall on Thursday this year.
Right.
And I think it's always on Thursday.
It's always on Thursday.
I don't always pay attention to most things, so like simple shit like that, very elusive to me. But and then have to return to work on Friday, which is kind of annoying. But holidays are kind of bullshit as far as I'm concerned. So I will be celebrating Thanksgiving on Friday.
So how's the weather there? Is it really cold? Or?
Well, it's been very cold. I have not been out of the house today, but when I leave, I'll probably dress warmly. Nice sunny day, though.
Right.
Very sunny.
Yep. Well, I'm heading your way relatively soon. Beginning of this week or beginning of next week, somewhere around there.
Oh my goodness! All right.
So,
Yeah, I got a couple ideas.
Yep. We're gonna have fun.
Don't worry, the police won't be involved. It's okay.
Well, I get along with those guys pretty well.
Well, that's good. I need one of them vests.
No, you just need a negotiator like me. I've got a lot of time in negotiating. So
I want to get one of them vests, but they don't let you wear them in New York unless you're police.
Right.
But I need a permission slip. Maybe you get somebody to write something.
Well, maybe.
This man deserves a vest.
I've done so many things. I have all these coats from different police departments that when I was looking at something for them, I had to represent. Well, they wouldn't give me a vest, but they would give me a coat that would say police, right? And or when I was in Ireland, it was called Garda. And when it was in London, I forgot what they called it. But I have all of these coats. And what's very interesting was that they'd have it on the front and the back of the coat. And they would spray paint out the one in the front. And the one in the back, they'd leave so cops wouldn't shoot me. Because if I was facing someone, they'd know who I was. But they didn't see me. They'd see the notification on my back. So I have all these coats that have the notification on the back, but spray painted in the front. So when you were dealing with people and the other cops, they would know it was you, but you weren't representing as one of them. So yes, I have a lot of, I have a good deal of experience dealing with that. So.
Well, that's good.
Yes. And as long as you're white, you can do that.
You're an expert. Well, that's the white privilege game.
Yes, exactly. I mean, you're not any more freer than anybody else.
No, not at all. If anything,
right.
You're fucking retarded.
Yes, you're fucking retarded.
I'm sorry for all people who are sensitive to that word, but go fuck yourself. Anyway. Oh, well,
when I was a real youngster, before they said I was a genius, they said, he's just retarded.
Well, yeah, I got labeled some nonsense like hyperactivity was the word from my day. Send me to the retard school.
Right. Where those kids were smarter than the smart
kids.
Well,
some of them were definitely window lickers. I mean, they were, really. But then again, autism and things like that, it's such a neural overload that they bug out. And, some did have Down syndrome, or I forgot what they call it now, but, which is a genetic disorder. And they would just lump back in the day, the 70s, I was coming up, they just lump you all together and just say, well, that's the retarded class, and keep them isolated and you're goddamn contagion. He's a poor little bastard. I got bit. One of the kids bit me. It's horrible, but I knew I had a place there because they call it now neurodivergence. I definitely think I qualify for that because of the constant screaming and yelling and fright that I felt that was directed to me as a very small child, and that does have a neurological impact. But they didn't know anything like this. This is the butchery all side of mental health and all these things. They kind of just figure it out as they go along. And
that's why they call it practice. I have a practice. I'm just practicing.
It's terrible.
I'm a practicing surgeon.
Fortunately, my mother did pull me out of that insanity, but it was never really discussed. And then in my later years, I was diagnosed with PTSD, and I was like, yeah, certainly, that makes sense, And then doing my own research and reading different doctors and psychiatrists and things like that, and it does have a neurological impact.
Yep.
I do have the symptoms of that impact. I've learned to
understand.
But yeah, understanding is the best way to begin with something, at least for me. So I know where it comes from. I try to view these things as tendencies that I have, rather than burdens or horrible things like that, because that doesn't mentally that's not good to view yourself in such a shitty light. So I see them as tendencies that do
just
happen.
experiences that you can learn from. I've had this ability just to look at things from almost outside my body. If I'm being tortured, I'm just kind of looking at it. Oh, look at that. And I don't internalize that. And now there are certain physical things when you're getting tortured that you kind of stick with you. But if
that phone call sure as hell was torturing me. That's why I had to intervene.
Right. Well, which I really appreciate.
And I saw the pain on your face. I said, "Oh my God, this has to stop."
Right. And
I understand. I shouldn't be so mean, but
I bring that up to the audience because it needs to be seen, because John really is a great metaphor for a certain, like they keep calling him the canary in the coal mine, right? And he is the example of a person who manifests this himself. He's got this great opportunity, great things are in his life, and yet he chooses to live the life he chooses.
Well, I'm not going to say this for John in particular, but as an overall statement, we do create the world that we live in.
Right.
In the sense that if you have a belief system that the world is out to get you, you on a subconscious level do and say things and engage in activity with the world as it is, people around you, and that you feel that you're all on your own, the world's against you.
Yep.
You're gonna wind up isolating yourself.
Yep.
And then you don't realize it until you are all alone.
Right.
And it reinforces itself. Belief systems are very powerful.
Yep.
If you think you're a piece of shit, then you're gonna put people, places, and things in your life to confirm that you're a piece of shit.
Yep.
Now, if you think you deserve love, affection, consideration, respect, if you really believe that of yourself, then you will manifest that in the way you live.
Yep.
See, these things are simple, but because from my own experience, having a lot of that negative sense of self hardwired in, because you told this, people essentially brainwashed as a young child.
Right.
It's about reprogramming. It's about you gotta, I love that movie, The Manchurian Candidate, with Frank Sinatra.
Yep.
Well, there's that scene in there where Frank Sinatra's trying to break the programming of the Manchurian Candidate.
He's got a full deck of Queen.
He's got a full deck of what is it? The Queen of Hearts, right?
Queen of Hearts, yep.
And you see the guy bugging out, and he holds them over. He says, "Listen, man, we're gonna bust up the place. We're gonna pull up the wiring.
Yep.
Anybody says that you want to play solitaire, you say, not today, Buster."
Right.
I remember I saw that in my, and I was like, yeah, that's what I'm doing with my life.
Yep.
You got to break down this,
You got to pull up the wiring.
It's all self-imposed bullshit.
Yep.
I mean, granted, I didn't bring that on myself. That's the outside shit, fucked up family, all that. But when you get an awareness, then it's your responsibility. That's how I look at it.
Yep, it is.
It's my responsibility to become deprogrammed.
Yep.
And I most of us who've gone through certain things, not always identical, but I like to use the term getting knocked out of the frame. When you get knocked out of the frame,
yep,
due to some kind of trauma or whatever it may be, you see the man behind the curtain. You see, because you don't trust nobody, really. And you realize, like, oh shit, these people aren't to be trusted.
Right.
But if you've lived sort of like a quote unquote normal life, and you're still in the frame, you're going to think somebody like me talking to you, aside from using a funny voice, of course, as a complete crackpot. What are you talking about? Because they've never had that situation where
they've
program
never.
Yourself as a matter of life or death.
They've never realized it. Everyone's programmed. They just don't realize what's going on.
They're just not hip to it.
Right.
And that's just life, man.
So on that, why don't we say goodbye? Because it's way
Yes,
past your
I got
10
to take
minutes,
my walk.
and I got to go do stuff.
All right, my friend. Well, thank you for your time.
Okay, I'll talk to you soon, and thanks for.
All right, God bless everybody.
Yeah.
God bless you, John. We've got a lot of love for you.
Yeah, baby.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye. So that's it, kids. I may come back on about 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. Depends on where I got to go see the doctor. I got to do a bunch of things. So I just want to say how much I care about you. And remember, if you want to get a hold of me, the dudewake42 at Gmail, dudewake42 at Gmail. It'd be great if I'm going to be on the high wire in the next few days until April. So I could really appreciate something being thrown in the old PayPal. So go back and watch all the old shows. Go start putting them on thumb drives, The Dreamy Dreamland show will be worth something. It is worth something today, but if you were to keep it safe, it'll be worth something, especially those guided meditations. Go, Jenny Pooh, go find some of those guided meditations and put them on a hard drive for yourself and your family and anybody else who wants to, too. Okay, so I love you guys. I'll talk to you soon.